Nothing amazing happens here. Everything is ordinary. We've talked about Naota and his journey towards maturity. We've talked about Mamimi's attempts to escape from her responsibilities through flights of fancy. Now, we'll take a look at everyone's favorite Manic Pixie Dream Girl, the one who pushed this entire narrative into motion, and some might say the true antagonist of Fooly Cooly. Today, we're wrapping things up with this 3-part analysis by looking at Haruko, Space Patrol Officer. In addition to finishing this character study, I'll be giving my short thoughts on the 2 new seasons that are coming out, Fooly Cooly Alternative and Progressive. If you would like to see part 2, you can find the video on my Facebook page. For some reason, the fine people over at King Record Company felt that it was necessary to block my last video on this series so that only certain people in America, Canada, and a few other smaller countries can see this video. So despite this obvious false DMCA claim that I lost, you can go and see part 2 on my Facebook. The link will be the first provided in the description. In the beginning, we looked at Naota and how he began his journey to adulthood, with his first steps being that in order to grow as a person, you sometimes need to accept and do things that you don't want to do. As the main character, Naota undergoes a character arc that is all too familiar in YA fiction and other stories about adolescence. It's about growing up. It's about changing. Even the smallest acts, like drinking a sour drink even though you hate them, shows a lot about him and his plans to mature. Haruko, on the other hand, doesn't change. In fact, her mission seems pretty static throughout the series. Even after all is said and done, she is in fact the change for Naota. She acts as his first love, a rival, and even his catalyst for change at first. For lack of better terms, Haruko is both Naota's Manic Pixie Dream Girl and sagely guide, though in certain contexts these 2 roles are interchangeable. Some of you may be familiar with the term Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but for those of you who aren't, the term was originally coined by film critic Nathan Rabin to describe a static female character who is eccentric, quirky, with an unabashedly feminine quality to them, and, to quote Rabin, exists solely in the fevered imaginations of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. Now, merely having one of these qualities in a female character doesn't make them automatically a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and in fact, this trope can even be used as a catalyst for a character to change. A good example that comes to mind is Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim. Throughout the entire comic series, she exhibits all of the traits of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl. She's eccentric, she's quirky, and has a walk to the beat of their own drum kind of attitude, but is in fact only there as a motivation for Scott to overcome her 7 evil exes. At first. This next point is shown much clearer in the comics, and the movie kind of skims over this little plot point. But at the final showdown, Ramona, seeing Scott change and finally accept all the bad decisions he's made in his life and begins to go down a road of deeper understanding and humility and maturity, is motivated to change herself, choosing to confront the monsters that she has created by running away instead of dealing with them head-on. And by the end of the comic, Scott and Ramona both work to be better people together, not only to each other, but for each other. Now, let's compare this to Haruko. Well, while she is a Manic Pixie Dream Girl in some instances, she can also be described more accurately as the anti-Naota, or just simply antagonist, opting to chasing her own dreams of attaining Adamisk's power through Naota. Her ambition is far-reaching, and she is willing to manipulate and destroy anyone who gets in her way, really. Unlike a traditional Manic Pixie Dream Girl, Haruko is using Naota to accomplish her goals, while keeping the appearance of being his developmental crush. The term developmental crutch is an interesting term because it describes how Haruko both acts as Naota's source for growth and change, while at the same time is actually just a vehicle for her own ends. Let's look at this relationship in action with the Swing the Bat episode. The core theme of this episode is insecurity, and how Naota deals with it in the lack of masculinity and confidence. Why else would he try to play baseball like his older brother, and inevitably be fed up with his rival and future love interest Haruko when she inevitably beats him? While the climax of this episode involves Naota finally swinging the bat and gaining the confidence to overcome obstacles by himself, Haruko is only sowing in her own seeds. By helping Naota realize his own potential, she gives herself his trust and his emotional availability, at least on the surface. He becomes a lot more accepting of Haruko and even attempts to run away with her in a future episode. In this new context, Haruko breaks away from the stereotypical Manic Pixie Dream Girl and instead uses Naota to get her own goals while also bringing out his journey to adulthood. It isn't until the last episode that we see Naota take Haruko's plan into his own hands and uses that very same power against her. Perhaps the best illustration of this power dynamic is the scene in the first episode. It's my personal favorite scene in the entire series, and it only lasts about 30 seconds. In this scene, Haruko is questioning what is underneath his band-aid, where she had struck him in the beginning of the episode. What is underneath the band-aid? The suspense in this scene builds as Haruko keeps up her questioning, with Naota doubting himself and questioning what is in fact happening to him. From the look on her face, Haruko has an idea of what exactly she did. However, she wants him to say it. She wants him to show her the extent of her damage and influence, the camera getting uncomfortably close to either character, and the tension builds as her excitement is more and more apparent until finally, he snaps. And in a childish outburst, asks why Haruko is there rather than with his dad, who she came home with to get into his house. The roles are changed in an instant. When Naota slaps her hand away, she becomes hurt, innocent even, but it's all a ploy just to disarm him, and just as quickly as it began, it ends. Despite her manipulative nature and her action throughout the 6-episode run, Haruko doesn't really change as a character. We don't really know a lot about her at times, and we know many times that she has chased after Atomisk at least. But we can bet that she will chase him until the heat death of the universe. Or will she? Fooly Cooly 2 and 3 are coming up. Is it possible for Haruko after all this time to change, just like the characters in this first run? Which leads me to part 2 of this video. What the future holds for Fooly Cooly. This summer, we'll be given not one, but 2 new seasons of Fooly Cooly, alternative and progressive. Adult Swim, in their affinity to surprise their fans, released the first episode of Fooly Cooly Alternative on April Fools of this year. After watching this first episode, I'm left thinking that this won't be the same Fooly Cooly. Obviously, the plot's not the same, and the full season hasn't been released yet, and when Fooly Cooly concludes, I'll be talking more about it, but there are some things to glean from this first episode. Like I said before, this will not be the same Fooly Cooly. It'll not be as wacky or as non sequitur as the same, and the aesthetic form in the original series is not really present, so how can this be about Fooly Cooly? Well, because it still talks about growing up, which is what Fooly Cooly is at its core, a tale about maturity. It's the first episode, and we get a taste of what is to come. Instead of a budding young boy on the cusp of puberty, we have 4 high school girls who seem lost in what they want to do. They'll soon be out of adolescence and the phase as teenagers, and soon enter into the adult world with talks of careers, colleges, and finding an overall purpose in life. I think that Fooly Cooly is doing with its narrative is important, as well as unique. We like to think that growing up is this pivotal moment in a person's life that only happens once. Whenever it's the loss of innocence, or a final big gesture of maturity or charity. But it's not. Progress, lasting progress that changes a person and makes up who they are, doesn't happen in your formative years. Each stage in life gives us a chance to explore new parts of ourselves. We like to think that people just get stuck in their ways after a certain age. It's usually after college, or even in their late 40s, or even in their early 20s. And while obviously your body has stopped developing after a point, people can still find new purposes in life. What you thought you wanted to do when you were a teenager or a kid will almost certainly not be what you want to do when you grow up. And even if it does, your understanding and interests, who you are as a person, is not set in stone. So I know that little ending got a little preachy there, but that's the end of this character analysis for Fooly Cooly. I might be doing a fourth video in this series, but I'm not 100% on that yet. But as always, I do appreciate you for taking the time to listen to me for this brief moment. If you want to help out this channel, please hit the subscribe button. I actually have a Patreon. Believe it or not, I don't know why I do, but it's in the description. Not recommended or really... Oh god, I'm so bad at these intros. Because they're not scripted. I don't script these outros. But leave a like in the comments. Leave a like at the comments. What the... I really need to script these.